Hello, everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. I'm pretty excited, guys, because I'll be talking today to Gary James McQueen. Gary was first introduced to the fashion world by his late uncle, Alexander McQueen, who mentored and inspired him to be the artist he is today. He was employed as the head of textile design for the Alexander McQueen in 2005, experimenting different designs and how the industry truly works. He learned so much from this industry and decided to start his own venture. Gary James McQueen worked alongside Alexander McQueen until his passing in 2010 and was trusted with many personal projects, including the Chrome Score artwork. He's gone on to start his Gary McQueen fashion house. It's still a new venture that is so unique, and you can see lots of inspiration from what his late uncle has taught him. Today, we'll be talking to him about the creativity side of things and what the loneliness, anxiety, depression that comes with it. We all think about creativity, but we don't see the other side of being creative. It comes with its own struggles, its own financial burden. He'll be telling me about that and how he's going through trying to overcome this pain to find his job. Meet Gary. Hello, everyone, again. Welcome to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. I am super delighted, as I said in my introduction, to talk to Gary McQueen. Gary, thank you so much for having me. And thank you. I'm really glad that you took that time out to say yes. I know your schedule, looking at what you always do, is so busy. How are you
Yeah,
today?
yeah, I'm really good. I mean, I'm really tired. There's a lot going on at the moment, actually. So I'm currently working on a digital fashion show, uh,
Yes.
which is my first full collection of clothes, digital clothes, and hopefully a collection of physical clothes as well.
Mm.
So we're looking to launch that in March 21.
Wow.
Uh, but there's a lot going into it. There's so much to sort of consider with this new way forward in terms of digital assets.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's working partly in like a traditional sense in the fashion world, but also
Yeah.
considering the 3D digital aspect of that as well. So there's two different worlds that you're trying to collide,
I
and
know.
it's just figuring out that the way that all works together. So
I know
it's a
it's
lot.
so confusing. I think for everyone, even the healthcare sector, for example, the way we see our doctors make appointments is no longer the same. They say do not even turn up.
Yeah,
Everything is changing. Everything is going online now. Before I even go down to this, what you do and everything, just to tell us a little bit about yourself because you have a unique background, especially if you've had
yeah.
been, having an uncle who was late Alexander McQueen. This is just, you must have learned so much from him. Could you just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Who I am. I never think about that. I don't know actually. I don't know anymore. um, Well, I was influenced from Lee, like by Lee, like Alexander McQueen from quite a young age, where he used to babysit me, and I've always been quite artistic from a young age. He used to bring around the horror films and all that when he was babysitting. He was probably about 18 at the time, and I was probably about 8, and that heavily influenced me from a young age with film. So I used to draw from those films as well and create my own little worlds as well.
Mm,
But yeah, I studied graphic design. Um, and went into publishing after that. Started as a junior there, where I learned like a lot of the digital aspects of like the print production and everything sort of technical, really, in terms of creating high quality work.
mm,
Um, and when that went into liquidation, I was out of work and I was working in a warehouse at the time. And then Lee got in touch with me and he had a position that had opened for menswear at Alexander McQueen for a textile designer. So yeah, he took me in there, showed me about, and that's when my career started in the fashion industry. And I worked 14 seasons, which is 7 years at Alexander McQueen, and I didn't know anything about fashion before I started there. I didn't study fashion, but I've always been very good at adapting to situations
mm,
and and very don't know what the right word is, like flexible in terms of the way that I in terms of the way that
Is it the way you saw
put
and
my work,
yeah.
how I adapt my work to different industries and stuff like that, you know. So I learned quite quickly how to work with the pattern pieces and the garments, and then put my unique spin on things and create the printed artworks and woven artworks for the collections, you know.
That's amazing. Now, having your uncle take you on, was it challenging working with him? Because yeah, I mean, at the time, your late uncle was,
Yeah,
and his legacy is still living on up to now. But he was such an icon. Everyone really looked up to the way he worked. I watched his documentary and saw the way he visualized and the way he creates things from just being just seeing a product and just seeing what he could transform that product to. Was it hard working with someone who had that vision, who was such a visionary?
I think in one sense I could tap into that because I've got like a shared inherited spirit with him in terms of the storytelling. So when he would give a brief, I would be very good at dissecting that brief and looking outside the box, and usually come up with concepts myself in terms of the tech, like the print side of it, that he was probably thinking of, you know. And you know, when I first started there, I think he was doing it more of a favour, as a favour. When we started, he did know that I was artistic, but I think he was pleasantly surprised eventually that, you know, how good I was, and
How fast you were as well to learn and
how
adapt
fast
to
to
do
learn, yeah, and adapt, yeah, exactly. But yeah, you know, I didn't make a big deal about being his nephew when I was there. You know,
yeah,
I was really just trying to prove myself with my work.
yeah.
A lot of people didn't know I was his nephew for the first year, you know,
Wow.
really. So, well, the menswear team didn't know I was part of their team, to tell the truth, by the way. Lee just introduced me to it. He's kind of showed me around and then just sort of left me there. And I didn't have a desk for the first 6 months or something. And the menswear team didn't know I was part of their team until then. So, yeah.
Oh no, that's really hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why he was, really, you know. He's very sporadic and you know, it's almost like the central nervous system, and everybody who works around him like neurons, you know, sort
Mm,
of firing off of that, you know.
yeah. One thing I find with creativity, because since you've left Alexander McQueen, you started your own venture. But
Yeah.
one thing I find with creativity, and it doesn't matter who you are, creativity requires a lot of freedom. It
Mm.
requires you to be able to express yourself. And now with the COVID virus and coronavirus pandemic going on in the world, there's a lot of lockdown, and that has damaged creativity. It's created a lot of isolation, anxiety, depression, and loneliness. And these are key things that is going on, real things going on right now.
Um,
How has that affected your creativity mind?
I mean, for me, because I'm a digital artist, the
Mm,
COVID situation has actually brought about more opportunities for myself,
mm,
where I was kind of held back before. I mean, I've always, even before COVID, you know, just being a creative in general, I've always suffered with loneliness. As a creative, it's when you're a creative person, you're kind of stuck in your own little world, even though you might be surrounded by people that you love and you want to uh, interact with them
mm,
more. You're still stuck in your head in that world, and it's a journey that you have to make alone, you
mm,
know.
mm,
Um, and it's not until you're finished with like an art piece or whatever you're working on that it becomes more like a revelation, and you get to show that to the people
mm.
around you and the general public. You know, that's when you feel that freedom more than anything. But the process itself is always, I've always found, very lonely,
Yeah,
um, and isolating, you know.
yeah. And
Yeah,
how do you deal with that?
I don't know, actually. I don't deal with it well, to tell you the truth, you know. Obviously I'm very focused on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I've always found it a struggle, you know. I've got young kids as well.
Mm,
And it's really hard to kind of separate yourself from that world into your own world, and at the same time just wanting to spend more time with them, you know,
Absolutely.
mentally.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's really hard way to be, you know. So it's a double-edged sword, really. You know, I love being creative and creating new things to share with people, new ideas.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like I say, it is a very isolating existence. You almost feel like a ghost. So
And I know I do understand because I also a little bit of my creative side with what I do, and it can be very isolating because you have no one to talk to and no one to understand people. It's
yeah,
very hard to find people like you that you could just share that conversation with, but
yeah, yeah,
I always have to find time to deal with that.
yeah. I'm sure there's a, you know,
Mm,
it must affect a lot of, like you say, mainly creative people. You
yeah.
know, uh, I've got quite a number of mental health issues. Not, you
Mm,
know, like depression and anxiety has been a big one throughout my life as well. You know, anxiety, and I think from a young age, having that creative outlet when I was younger, especially, helped me escape from anxiety and the real world in one sense. But as I've got older, it's almost become more isolating than
mm.
anything, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Another question, you when you transition to start your Gary McQueen own brand, one of the challenges I always find with starting a new business or any new venture is the social isolation pressure, which could be bound down to financial struggles,
Yeah,
trying to keep up, the unemployment side of you are starting this brand, but you are your own person because you
yeah.
have to find the financial support to keep that going. How have you tackled that bit?
It's been so hard, to tell the truth. Like, since if I'd known how hard it was going to be, I probably never would have started my own brand.
Yeah.
Um, because, you know, you think, oh yeah, it's going to be hard, but
Mm,
it's actually to the point of insanity that you have to put yourself, and the struggles you have to put yourself through,
mm,
especially when you've got young children to support,
exactly.
um, and you can't even support yourself, you know, through it all,
Mm,
and not knowing if it's going to work out as well, and just wanting that good news, you know, to tell your family that, you know, things are going to turn around. But, you know, since I started, I've lived hand to mouth pretty much, and to persevere and still carry on and still try and create, because obviously the financial side of things can really put a wedge between your love of doing something creative and then the realism or the reality of having to make money, you
mm,
know.
mm.
But it's only recently that things are starting to come together more. It's taken about 5 years, to tell you the truth, of hard struggle, you know, doing events and trying to promote yourself. And when you're not a sociable person as well, like I'm not really, you really have to step outside that comfort zone
Mm.
and become somebody else, you know, that you're not really comfortable with in terms of socializing more, and just pushing yourself in general a lot more than what you would have. It can affect your health and your mental health as well more by doing that, you know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, like we had like just a breakthrough. We've been pitching since last lockdown to get some investment for this fashion show that I'm creating.
Mm,
And one company that I was really interested in was Epic Games, who create software called Unreal Engine, where you can host a digital experience.
mm,
So we were pitching to them for like since the last lockdown, like I say, uh, for one of their mega grants, and we just secured like the funding to get it going. So that's such
nice.
a relief for myself after the years of struggle to have just one company that believed in what I was doing and
Mm,
bought into myself as a person.
mm.
Um, you know, it's just light, breakthrough of light at the end of that tunnel, and
Yeah.
things starting to come together now. So
Now, Gary, what you're saying is actually so true. I've seen so many people, and their biggest issue is when it comes to creativity is that they're so good at what they do, but they don't have the time to go out there to socialize because they're probably an introvert. They're not that kind of person anyway. They just prefer to be left alone and do what they love to do, be creative in their own little space.
Yeah,
Or, so they're not out there to do the financial, do the
yeah,
legal work, do the other bits. And that,
that's
as
the
a
problem, really.
startup, that drives them mad because
Yeah,
they know they could do something special, but they just
exactly.
don't have the resources or the know-how to do the other bits of it. And so
Yeah,
that's mental health balance, which we don't talk about when we talk about, we see this fascinating people starting up and doing amazing work, but we don't talk about the balancing act of it, that people are struggling because of that lack of balance and lack of know-how. But
yeah.
in your case, you've managed to try, even though you said it took you 5 years, how did you manage to balance those acts? Because people are still struggling. At least
It's
you might
really,
think you're bad, but there's people in a worse opposition because they're really, really struggling and they don't know how. Could you just give me a bit of a tip? What would you tell someone who's going through really
I
hard
don't know
times?
if it's a bit of, it's not really luck, but it's perseverance. And, um, when I first started, I can relate to what you're saying, where you're sort of introverted and you're sort of working behind your closed door and the work's not really getting out there to people. Um, but if you don't make that step of going out and making those, it's about making connections, and contacts. And for me, it started actually. I reached out to a photographer, friends, really good friends of mine now, called Sane Seven, who shot my whole first 3 campaign shots. And these were people I didn't know at all. I just saw their work on Instagram, and I
Mm,
reached out to them with just my concepts. And I was fortunate enough that they loved them so much that they just agreed to work with me as a collaboration, just a creative venture.
mm,
Um, and from there, they introduced me to somebody else called Jane Galpin, who started to champion me a little bit more. And then she introduced me to other people. And it kind of built up like that, And then before you know it, I've just made so many connections over the years.
mm,
But you just really have to follow up on everything, because you might meet 20 people in a few weeks. Nothing might come out of it.
mm,
But, and as I was going to meet these people, I might just about have enough money for the train fare, you
mm,
know? And
mm.
it's putting that kind of effort in to follow up on every lead that you can get, um, and not knowing if anything's going to come out of it. And it usually didn't.
Yeah.
But doing enough of those over the years, I've built up enough connections and relationships with people where they start to know what I'm about and buy into my creativity and me as a person.
Mm.
Um, that it's just kind of snowballed eventually. But it's not as easy as that sounds. Do you know what I mean? It was literally, it's been 5 years of not knowing, living in debt, hating yourself, and lots of stuff really.
Yeah.
Um, crying yourself to sleep. you know, crying
Oh,
yourself
but
in the daytime.
yeah.
It's really hard, and to persevere and still stay motivated has been a
Yeah.
struggle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's so true. And your new collection coming out next year, you say you're having the virtual events. Can you tell us a little bit about what we should expect and from this new collection? Are you doing a whole collection or what is it that we should
Yeah,
from there?
yeah. I mean, it's my first collection. I mean, the image you see behind me is one of my photo shoots. That was like really the first photo shoot where I created like garments, and that was only to sell a scarf. So I created a whole world with garments and styling with the hair and makeup and the photo shoot, just to create the story as a basis.
Mm,
Um, so that was my first step into garments, and this digital fashion show is going to be around 20 looks, um, full collection of 20 looks, and it's all going to be done in a digital world. So it's all going to be 3D. Um, the clothes are going to be 3D. The textiles, I've got to create those in 3D.
mm,
The models are going to be digital. The whole set, the whole world is going to be a virtual reality world. And then we're also planning to create augmented reality assets off the back of that. So what you could do is wear you could send in a photo, then we would Photoshop that onto the person, and then they can use it for their social media rather than going and buying a physical product like garment. That's one option. But it's going to be a sports and lifestyle collection partly as well. So I'm aiming to launch a sportswear collection off the back of it as well. A physical one, a real one.
A real one. Oh wow!
Some showpieces as well, and the showpieces are more likely to be the social media assets, the digital assets.
Wow. So the final question is that the fashion world has changed massively, as you rightly said. It's no longer what we know it to be. There's the digital world and everything. So what's your hope for the future for the fashion world and for the work you're doing in the art collection?
I mean, I think it's going to evolve more anyway into this kind of digital world. We don't know at the moment what's happening with like the future with COVID and stuff like that. But I think there's a sustainability aspect to the digital side of things where you don't have to go out and produce physical samples, to test the market first. You can use your digital assets to test the market and see what's going to sell before you start producing, and work forward like that. I think that's one big aspect of the digital movement.
Okay.
Yeah. And in terms of the art, I'm still, I've always had an overall vision of what my brand's going to be, which is branches out into pretty much everything, using my aesthetic as its basis, So the storytelling is like a strong foundation behind everything I do, and this digital show will be the next step in that, really. And you never know where things are going to lead. When it's a new thing that's happening, it's like when Facebook launched, nobody knew where that would lead, and this new platform that we're creating, we don't know how it'll be used in the future. You might just be living in that world eventually.
It might be the world that's here to stay. I as you were talking, I said I can't let you go without asking you this. If as a creative person, there's so many people out there, because I'm thinking about other people watching this. What support would you encourage the government or entrepreneurs, successful other businesses to put in place to help people who are going through a tough time during this time, especially people who are creative, who are the ones who will create our next future? Because without people like yourself, being in your space to create what you do the work you do, I don't know what the world would just be so boring, just keep living. But you guys need that space. But at the same time, it takes so much from you, because it takes loneliness, it takes so much isolation, it takes financial burden. What would be your hope that the government or other people out there who are supporters of people like yourself, what to do?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this, because I've just put myself through the struggle and sort of not thought about that, just stayed focused on what I'm doing and just survived. And it shouldn't have had to be that hard, to tell you the truth. So you're probably right that there should be something in place by the government where there's like some kind of funding put aside for creatives more, because it's such an important industry. Creatives drive things forward, with new ideas. So yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that, because I haven't really sought that kind of help myself, which, if it was readily available, maybe I would have more. But, one thing that we are doing with the creative show is supporting Mind Charity with it, which is a mental health charity, and we've aligned ourselves with that. It's something that's affected myself quite strongly throughout my life. Also, my uncle suffered with his issues as well, so it's just really nice to be aligned with a mental health charity like Mind, going forward.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you so much for your time today to talk to me and give me an insight into your world and all the lovely collection you have coming up next year. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks, Anne. That's really nice. Really nice speaking to you.
You too.